You're watching live satellite news.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think you've made it. I think you've made it pretty clear who you've come to hear. So in just a minute, I'm going to talk about my favorite subject, which is going to be what Hillary can and will do in the 8 years following January 20th. But before that, there have been a couple of things said by Donald Trump in the last few weeks that wait till you hear them, then you'll really boo. That I'd like to clarify a little bit. And these are important points that he's made, and it's important that you hear the answer on them. The first point was when he was asked about revealing his income tax returns, which every presidential candidate has done for 40 years. He said, "None of your business," which did not go over so well. And then he started giving various explanations. And one of the explanations was that he had given his financial statement to the Election Commission that listed his assets and liabilities. But believe me, as someone who's filled out financial statements and someone who's filled out an income tax return, I can tell you they are two very different animals. And you will learn a whole lot more about Donald Trump if he produces his income tax return. And so that's why I'd like to make him an offer. An offer I hope he can't refuse. Now, Donald Trump, at one point, he says various things at different times, but at one point, and he said it several times, is that he can't do it, can't release it because he's under audit. Now, I've got news for him. I'm under audit too. And I would be delighted to meet him any place, any time between now and election. I'll bring my tax return. He could bring his tax return. Nobody's going to arrest us. It is not. There are no rules against showing your tax returns. And just let people ask us questions about the items that are on there. How many of you would be afraid to have your tax return made public? Yeah. It does not. No. You're only afraid if you got something to be afraid about. And he's not afraid because of the IRS. He's afraid because of you. So I will meet him in Omaha or Mar-a-Lago, or he can pick the place anytime between now and election. I'll bring my return, he'll bring his return. We're both under audit. And believe me, Nobody's going to stop us from talking about what's on those returns. And send the word to him, if you will. Another thing he said is he says America isn't great anymore. You know, you need him. But because America just isn't great anymore. Now, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I disagree with him violently on that subject, which I'll say a little bit about more later. But it's how he explains what he would do about that, because I'm going to quote his exact words. I'm going to read this because I want to be sure I've got it exactly right. He says, "No one knows the system better than me, which is why I alone can fix it." Well, la-di-da, you know. I mean, this is only he can fix it. I didn't really realize we were in such grave danger. I mean, there's 325 million Americans, and if this guy leaves for Canada, it's supposed to be hopeless for the rest of us. Oh no, he alone can fix it. Yeah, it takes some kind of nerve or something else to really have the notion that out of 325 million people, you're the only ones that can fix it. Now, I think when somebody makes a statement like that, you should look at his record when he has appealed to the American public before. Now, Donald Trump has been in a lot of businesses. He's had a lot of bankruptcies, but usually that's just involved borrowing money from the American public. But in 1995, to my knowledge, it's the only time Donald Trump went to the American people and he said, "Join me, you know, I'm a winner, join me and invest in my company, Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts." It's the only time he asked the public to join him. But now you got a chance to join the great man in this investment. That was in 1995. They listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and Mr. Trump, very modestly, made the ticker symbol DJT. Guess what that's for? So he names the company after himself, or he gets the ticker symbol after himself. The next 10 years, the company loses money every year, every single year. He takes out $44 million in compensation during that period. In 1995, when he offered this company, if a monkey had thrown a dart at the stock page, the monkey...
The best antenna in the world.
On average would have made 150%. But the people that believed in him, that listened to his siren song, came away losing well over 90 cents on the dollar. They got back less than a dime. And you know the history of his enterprises where he was borrowing money, where one time after another he went into bankruptcy. I've really never known another businessman that brags about his bankruptcies. You know, I mean, and you know, to tell you the truth, why not? I mean, it's his claim to stardom. I don't know anybody else that's had 6 bankruptcies, but there he is. Now, the final straw occurred this weekend, and you know about it. Donald Trump managed to get in front of George Stephanopoulos after Mr. and Mrs. Khan had told about their Gold Star son. Mr. Khan had offered him Mr. Trump a copy of the Constitution. And Donald Trump said this, when asked by George Stephanopoulos about, well, Mr. Khan first said, "You have sacrificed nothing and no one." Quite an accurate statement. And Trump said, "I think I've made a lot of sacrifices. I've worked very, very hard. I've created thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs, built great structures. I've had tremendous success." And George, a little overcome, said, "Those are sacrifices?" And Trump, believe it or not, said, "Oh, sure, I think they're sacrifices." Now, the young son of Mr. and Mrs. Khan died a dozen or so years ago. In that dozen of years, we've employed a lot of people. You know, I've had fun doing it. We've made money just like Donald Trump has made. I have made no sacrifice. No member of my family has gone. No member of the Buffett family has gone to Iraq or Afghanistan. No member of the Trump family has gone to Iraq or Afghanistan. We've both done extremely well during this period, and our families haven't sacrificed anything, and Donald Trump and I haven't sacrificed anything. But how in the world can you stand up to a couple of parents who have lost a son and talked about sacrificing because you were building a bunch of buildings? I mean, that is, when I heard that, my mind went back, and this goes back before most of you were born, but they went back to the McCarthy hearings. And at the time of the McCarthy hearings, at the time of the Senate McCarthy hearings with the Army, Joe Welch had a young assistant of his maligned by Senator McCarthy, and McCarthy went on and implying this guy was a communist and doing all kinds of things. And finally, Joe Welch couldn't take it anymore, and he said, and I'll quote him, "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" And I asked, Donald Trump, "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" I might add, just add one thing. McCarthy's career went straight downhill after that. Let's move on to more pleasant subjects. Unlike what Mr. Trump says, America's great. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the USA. Because 240 years ago, we started with a piece of paper. It was a blueprint for a new society, a society unlike anything the world had ever seen before. And in 1776, that blueprint started us on a path that has finally led to the next woman president. It was imperfect, but it was aspirational. Now that blueprint has done wonders for this country in terms of overall prosperity. When I was born in 1930, if my parents had seen what the world would look like in 2016, they wouldn't have believed it. The GDP per capita is 6 times what it was when I was born. That's never happened in the history of mankind. It's a miracle. And the miracle is America. And it still has all the qualities that it had in 1930 and which propelled us forward like this. So America, in terms of delivering wealth, has been incredible. In terms of distributing wealth, it has not been living up to what I consider its potential. I just described to you $56,000 of GDP per capita, and that means a family of 4 on average would have $224,000 of GDP per capita. But it hasn't worked out that way. This country, while making some people enormously wealthy, has left people behind, and those people were just as willing, probably more willing, to go to Afghanistan. They were as willing to go to Normandy 70 years ago. And And in Hillary Clinton, you have somebody that cares about that. And I would venture to... Let me give you just one more statistic and I'll get away from that, but I know how popular that is. But in the first year of the Forbes 100 back in the 1980s, the aggregate wealth of the 400 was $93 billion. You can look it up on the internet. Currently, it's $2,374 billion. That's 25 for 1. Now, I'd like everybody that's had 25 for 1 themselves, if they'd raise their hand, it hasn't happened. They told us it would trickle down, But what has happened is it's flooded upward. And that almost 2.4 trillion from 400 people in this country, they're not bad people. I know a good many of them. Like to know more, actually. But they have benefited from a system that, frankly, is tilted toward people like me and the rest of that group. I mean, it's not because they're evil, but they've taken advantage. They're the ones with the lobbyists. They're the ones that have come up with carried interest where their income is taxed at rates far lower than almost all of the people in this room. And it's going to take somebody with strength, resoluteness, brains, energy. It's going to take that to somebody to affect change. I mean, there's no question about it. It won't happen by itself. It takes guts. It is a tough job when you try and change the code on people that are making millions and millions of dollars a year in order to give a better break to the people who work just as hard, maybe harder, and take home, a few $100s a week. It's really wrong that in a country where $56,000 of GDP per person for anybody that works 40 hours a week not to be able to provide a decent living for their family. It just doesn't make any sense. And it won't cure itself. And it certainly won't be cured with Donald Trump. It's going to take Hillary Clinton. It's going to take powers of persuasion. It's going to take a mandate from the people in her election. But she's spelling out what she's going to do as contrasted to one of the other candidates. She is telling you what she is going to do about the tax code. And when that gets enacted, I'll be a little worse off, and believe me, I can take it. And you'll be better off. Now, I'd like to make a little news, and this is a surprise even to Hillary. It's very easy. There were 129 million votes cast in the last presidential election. It's very easy to think, if you're watching a TV show or the weather's a little bad or something, to think, well, my vote really doesn't count. What difference is it going to make with 129 million? Well, I've got some real news for you. It doesn't make much difference if you're a Democrat in Idaho or a Republican in California. I mean, you were in a state where the electoral vote's going to be decided by majority vote, and you're on the short side in that case. But we live in a very special place. In Nebraska and Maine, we also cast electoral votes by congressional district. And we don't have to think about 129 million popular votes throughout the country. We have to think about 538 electoral votes. And yesterday on that same George Stephanopoulos show, they had 4 people predicting how the election would come out.
The best antenna in the world.
and Jonathan Karl of ABC News had gone state by state and he came up with his notion as to who was going to carry each state and how that would cause the electoral vote to come out. And those of you who watched the show yesterday saw that he came out 269 to 269. He absolutely said that he did not try to come out that way. He just looked state by state, 269 to 269. Now there's one district in the United States I am looking at the people that can change that 269 to 270. It happened in 2008 by 3,200 or 3,325 votes. We actually gave a vote separate than the rest of Nebraska. So it's been done. It's been done. But we're going to help that process along this time. I have pledged today that on Election Day, November 8th, I will take at least 10 people to the polls who would otherwise have difficulty getting there. And when you go home tonight, you can go to a website called Drive To, that's for the 2nd Congressional District's the number 2, Drive To Vote. And if you go there, it will offer you information on 3 things. How to register, how, if you need a ride on November 8th, you may find someone who will take you, we'll take care of that. And it'll also give you the chance to volunteer to take some people, whether it's 10 or a lesser number. Today I reserved Ollie the Trolley for November 8th. It seats 32. I'm going to be on it all day. I'm going to do selfies, whatever it takes. If it's snowing, if it's cold, my goal, and the goal of the people who've joined me on this drive to vote, my goal is to have the turnout in Douglas and Sarpy County, the 2nd District, is to have the turnout here be the highest percentage of potential voters of any district in the country. Let's give America a civics lesson. How about it? Everybody in the 2nd District. Yeah? And if the people in this room, if each one of you would pledge to take 10 people, that I can almost guarantee that'll be the margin of victory. So join me. You know, if you can take 20, do that. If you can only take 3 or 4, that's fine too. But get that neighbor who, you know, is watching that television program or feels it's a little cold, and shame them into coming with you to the polls. Now, just remember, Drive To Vote. Okay. Now, if you've read the Constitution, which apparently some people haven't, if you read Article 2, it deals with the presidency. Article 2 of the Constitution, look it up. That's where they describe the presidency. We wrote that Constitution. 39 men signed it. How would you ever guess? You'll find out in a minute. 39 men signed it. and in Article 2, describing the qualifications for the President of the United States, male pronouns, he, his, and him, were used 20 times. Just imagine that. And that's still in the Constitution 227 years later. He, his, and him. No hers, no she's. Well, on January 20th, we're going to elect the best president we've ever had, and somebody's going to change those pronouns.
You're watching Live Satellite News.